Hello and welcome to Swamp Talk, where we talk about everything Magic the Gathering. I'm Ryan,
And I'm Thomas.
and today we're going to be talking about the biggest announcement here that happened on the 22nd with the change to the ban list for Commander, the new addition to the Game Changers, and kind of what we're kind of feeling on what they're doing with balance here. So, to get right into it, Wizards finally took a look at bans that have been around for an obnoxiously long time in the Commander format, and they decided a few things needed to come off. Namely, Gifts Ungiven, Sway of Stars, Braid's Cabal Minion, Coalition Victory, and Panoptic Mirror. Um, Interesting list of cards there. Um, I think how they've done this is quite interesting. So they've all become unbanned and been moved to the Game Changers list, which kind of keeps them out of that really ultra casual play, which I think is kind of something unique to having the bracket system as part of Commander now. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all of these all of these changes are really going to take a sway into how Commander will play over the years. Right, we're going to get, as bans and unbans happen. We're going to get different types of play, especially in the higher brackets. But I think what's really important here for me is the fact that they're showing that they are willing to unban things. It's something I think that's kind of unprecedented for Wizards, or really the Commander format, right? Like, I don't know that there's ever been a card, uh, or there's been very few cards unbanned in history. Usually we just get cards added to the ban list. Now that we're getting cards unbanned, it really kind of shows that Wizards is willing to kind of tap into both the ban list and also cards that are troublesome. Kind of swap places. Maybe we'll see some cards off the ban list soon, and maybe some of the more problem cards as we see will enter the ban list. But as we see changes happen, I think this is all really good for especially the bracket system.
Yeah, I think it's nice to show that now that Wizards is kind of at the helm here, that they've decided that nothing is off limits. It definitely felt like things just got thrown on the ban list for Commander, and congratulations, that's where you live. Bye bye now. And there's been just, let's call it, a little bit of power creep in the last few years. And things that seemed like unbelievably powerful 5 or even 10 years ago just doesn't really have the same kind of push and pull that it once did. Um, you know, Panoptic Mirror is a great example. Games used to be slower, and that kind of chaining turns seem to be immensely powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say it won't be powerful now, um, but it's just not as fast as some other kind of options are. Um, and it doesn't seem that scary, especially since with the introduction of the bracket system, those really casual decks just won't have to deal with it. And I think all five of these cards, bracket 3 to 5, entirely reasonable. Absolutely game changers. Protect the baby seals. These are not cards that you want to see in against your precons. Definitely not there. I think Braids in particular could absolutely smother some precons to death. But in those more optimized lists, I don't think it'll be, and not to say it won't be impactful, but just it's not going to seem so oppressive that, wow, I can't believe they take this off the ban list. Um, and it's really refreshing to that maybe things will go on the ban list. They'll come off a year later as a couple more sets come. I think kind of introducing a more living and breathing list is kind of a great addition um, to the format. Things could go on now. Things could come off. I will admit they did. Gavin spoke at length in an article they released about some of the cards. There was a few cards that they said maybe that I'm like, please no. um, and Emrakul, Aeon's Torn, one of them in particular. But I think that's also because we played a lot during Rise of the Eldrazi, and yeah, he is a terrifying dude. Um,
Yeah.
and I'd be quite afraid of him. But moving on, really to the crux of why these kind of unbans have happened with the bracket system, they added a ton of game changers. to the list. However, they did remove two. Um, Trouble in Pairs and Trinisphere were removed. And considering this has only been out since, what, February, I think it's. I'm going to give them credit that they were like, hey, we were wrong. These things are really strong cards, but are they going to oppress the bracket 1 and 2 decks? I don't think so. And I think those were kind of good, it shows that they're like, hey, we made a mistake. We were wrong. Let's take them off there. These are strong engines, but they're not going to go out there and crush. And I think Trouble in Pairs in particular, this is a strong card, but I think it's really strong at the high levels of play where it's stopping those extra turn chains. But you don't see that in bracket 1 and 2, and the card draw in there is good, but it's not. I mean, it's good when people are doing lots and lots of things every turn, which in bracket 1 and 2, it just really isn't the case. Sometimes people don't cast 2 spells a turn. Sometimes people don't attack every turn. There's a lot of those triggers that'll be missed.
Yep.
Strong, but not.
It's fun to see that they're willing to own up to the decisions they make. Right. It's they put these 2 on the list. I don't know that I really cared that they were on the list or not on the list. I think it's fine. But it's cool to see that that they even though they put it on the list, they were willing to take it off when they realized, they're really not that bad. And that's really good to see, especially since they're doing it so fast, right? They're not just letting it fester, right? When they see that it's not really a problem, they're just taking it off. Like it's nice to see. And I think that I think the one thing that I would like to see, and I don't know if this has been said anywhere, but one thing that I really liked about Canadian Highlander, at least when they talk about the rules of pointed cards coming off the list and putting on the list, they say how it takes, right? It's I believe it's a 5 to it's all members have to vote to put something on or vote something off of the list, but it's 4 out of 5 that can make something higher or lower pointed, which we don't have points, which is fine, but it would be cool to if they would show how many yays do they have to how many nays to put something on the list or take something off the list. I would love to see that, because it kind of tells us that what is the ratio of people that are doing that.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see that. I'm curious though. Obviously with the advisory board, they give a lot of input and they have huge sway, but the final decision's really done all internally at Wizards. And I am curious, is it just Gavin? Is he like, all right, I got emails from all these people. All right, which one do I like the most? Or is there truly 5 people behind the curtain, voting? I would actually, honestly, it's a great point. I'd love to know a little bit more how the final decisions were made. But I really do like how they released an article kind of explaining their logic behind all of it. Some of which, I think maybe is a little optimistic here and there. But I think overall, Gavin did a really good job kind of, this is why we feel about this. This is why we feel about that. And there were a few points where I'm like, maybe. But he's a far better player than 99% of the community. So let's give him a shot for the moment, and see where it goes. Speaking of see where it goes, there were 18 cards added to the Game Changers list. Let's just run through them really quick. Teferi's Protection, Humility, Narset, Partner of Veils, Intuition, Consecrated Sphinx, Necropotence, Orcish Bowmasters, Notion Thief, Deflecting Swat, Gamble, Worldly Tutor, Crop Rotation, Seedborn Muse, Natural Order, Food Chain, Aura Shards, Field of the Dead, and Mishra's Workshop. One thing I'll say before we get into this, man, they decided green needed more hate. Somebody let the green players have way too much fun. No more fun for green. Back to the bottom of the pile for you. It was more green than I expected to be added to the Game Changers list. Surprising.
Yeah, I think that the cards that they added, some of them I was surprised that they didn't already have him on the list. Some of them were kind of like on the edge for me. I don't think any of them were like, oh, they don't. That doesn't need to be on the list for me. I can see why all of them were added. I can see where their logic is. But yeah, I mean, for a while there, green just got to go rampant, and I mean, I guess that's not unusual. I mean, unfortunately, I feel like, especially in Commander, green has always kind of been known as the you know lower end. I mean, I think that white was also in that list, but white has gotten a lot better cards. But I think green is still living in that big stompy world where, oh yeah, I mean, I'm gonna do something sometime. Like it's very interesting to it's kind of funny on how they added all these cards after they saw that green just went stomping through town and had its way with everything.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you really look at the way people play from 1 to 5. Green at the lower end of play is really powerful, while the higher you play, it becomes blue. So I think the fact that there's probably way more green at that lower end, probably we're like, oh, so these cards are pretty strong when they're played at low power level. But at high power level, they're just kind of cards. It's not a big deal. It's not anything crazy, and I think that made a lot of these really really good additions. And I think what was really interesting with these changes is they're really promoting play styles at higher brackets versus play styles at lower brackets. And I think one of the biggest examples of that are Narset, Notion Thief, and Orcish Bowmaster, where these are really strong cards, but when you play one of these cards and then you wheel, they are unbelievably strong. Narset in particular, like, oh, I just drew a ton of cards and you guys drew one, or Notion Thief, all your cards belong to me. I think that they're like, well, wheels are fun, and we don't want to stop wheels at 1 and 2, but we want to stop the wheels absolutely and utterly devastating players to the point where there's just no reprisal, no return, no counterplay. They either have the counter spell for the wheel or the game's over.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really good, where they're like, we don't want to stop wheels. We just want to stop wheels feeling unbelievably unwinnable.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one thing to kind of look at, right? You can there's two sides of that coin. There's the card itself, and then there are the things that are making the card bad. You get to set a precedent, and they get to set a precedent in this way. And unfortunately, and fortunately, if you set a precedent that's good, it's awesome. But if you set a bad precedent, it can haunt you for a long time. Which is, what do we want to? The precedent we want to set is: do we want to put the wheels on the game changers list, or do we want to put the cards that make wheels bad on the game changers list? And I think that it's better to put cards that are that make like specific cards really really awful to play against onto the game changers list, because like, well, if I'm playing my 1 or 2 deck, I still want to be able to wheel. I mean, I think that that's a really useful thing, especially in the 1 and 2 brackets. But yeah, if somebody has like a Notion Thief out, like all of a sudden it's no fun. It's no fun anymore. It's so I think that they're doing a really good job at setting the precedent of what do they want to put on the game changers list, and they're deciding that I want to put the cards that make certain cards bad on a game changers list, rather than looking at like a card itself and saying, well, at times you can be bad, so I'm going to put you on the game changers list. It's like, well, no, I mean, it's very situational, right? It's very cool to see.
See, I don't. I agree with you there. I don't think it's necessarily bad, but oppressive, I think, is the word. Where,
sure.
It's just, this crushed somebody to death. The baby seal was there on the ice. The orca came past and like, I'm gonna wheel you right into the ocean. You're now my lunch. Congratulations, it's over. And it's just I think it would feel really bad. And but kind of along those same lines, it's interesting how they're promoting it. In the bracket system, it says few tutors, and they were kind of specifically ignoring land tutors.
Yeah.
and a lot of other tutors. But then they added Gamble, Worldly Tutor, Natural Order, Crop Rotation. I think it's interesting that they're limited in saying few tutors, but then they put them in the Game Changers list. I think I don't disagree with it, and I think that adding more tutors to the Game Changers list, especially the really cheap ones, Gamble, or the 1 mana ones, or Natural Order in the case where it comes onto the battlefield, um, it wouldn't be entirely unreasonable for a green player to Soul Ring on turn 1, put out a second land, and then Natural Order, anything, Landwar Elves for example, and just eat it up and just absolutely decimate something.
Yeah.
Because there's so many great things. It's just so fast. Same with crop rotation. You're going to go grab your best land in your deck. Now, admittedly, a lot of the best lands, probably the top 7 best lands, are now on Game Changers. So automatically people weren't going to go grab those. But there's still just such a host of incredible lands to grab. And I don't think putting every strong land on the Game Changer is a way that they should go. So I kind of like getting rid of the cheapest and quickest land tutor as kind of a way to slow down play. I mean, so much of this is kind of slowing down play for that bracket 1 and 2, where these you're just not smothered to death instantly. I think it's a good way to do it. And it kind of on that line, they stopped. There's so many cards that have just crazy value, but Consecrated Sphinx, Necropotence, Seedborn Mute, Food Chain, Field of the Dead, to a lesser extent, but still Field of the Dead. Like Consecrated Sphinx, it's just card draw. But if it's not immediately answered, I've seen people get back to their turn with 25, 30 cards in hand from just the Consecrated Sphinx.
Card advantage is powerful.
I mean, it is. And again, I think at those higher levels, Consecrated Sphinx is fine. In fact, a lot of people would say it's not even that powerful because it's so expensive to play and it's a creature, so it's relatively easy to remove.
Mm-hmm.
But at those lower levels where people don't run as much removal or maybe don't threat assess it as much, like, oh, he's just drawing cards, it's not going to kill me. Well, the next 25 things he draws might.
You get to sculpt your hand. Like, I mean, everyone talks about it, right? Sculpting your hand to the best 7 cards out of all the cards you've drawn. If you can draw 25 cards around, which is very possible at Consecrated Sphinx, I mean, your hand's gonna look great every single turn, and it's you're gonna have so many resources at your disposal. It can be really oppressive. You're right for like 1 and 2. Especially if they don't, plan for it or kill it right away or threat assess it properly. It can be really oppressive. But I think it's good that a lot of these like kind of like went under the rug. Like, yeah, they're good, but you have to look at it from a very specific like scenario to be able to identify that they are problematic within like 1 and 2. It's good to see that they're doing that. They're looking at it from situational awareness.
Yeah, I have to admit, while there were a few things that I'm like, I can't, like Teferi's Protection, Deflecting SWAT, I was shocked weren't on the original list. Immensely powerful cards, especially Deflecting SWAT. Just your ability to either steal a win, counter a spell. It's just such a flexible and strong thing. But I will admit, a really strong addition, I think, to this was Seedborn Muse, which I'll be honest, I don't know if I ever would have come up with Seedborn Muse if I was asked to submit cards for this. I don't think I would have said Seedborn Muse. And when I first read it, I was like, why? Why are you doing this Seedborn Muse? And I really thought, I'm like, oh, wait a second. I've had times where I Seedborn untap, play these things, draw these things with activated abilities and do it, everybody's turn. I'm like, yeah, that's immensely powerful for bracket 1 and 2. I mean, especially if you're inside of Simic and you're truly flashing out things on top of Seedborn Muse. It's like, well, I get a turn every time somebody gets a turn. You made this? No, I made this. It's I think a really good addition, and something I think this could have been easily missed because it wouldn't have been on my top 20 next additions to this.
It's hard to see, right? Because I mean, you have to look at it from it's another situational card. You have to look at it not only from the perspective of what could it do theoretically on a turn. It's how like looking at how many cards over the last few years have creature like especially creatures or artifacts. How many artifacts that have activated abilities have been added? How many creatures with activated abilities have been added? Right,
It's true.
to be able to use those once every turn, to be able to attack and then have blockers up every single time. um, I mean, you become so versatile, and it's all just situation. Because if you did not have a lot of activated abilities on creatures, maybe Seaborn Muse doesn't really make it, right? Like, I mean, it's powerful to be able to attack and then have a bunch of blockers, but it's not like super powerful. But being able to activate abilities every single turn, now that is really powerful, especially in certain situations. So I think that it was very situational to kind of see, but I'm glad that they saw it. I'm glad that they were able to identify that. I just think it's very interesting that now they're putting on the list. Now one of their decks that came out through Dragon's Tarkir now have got a Game Changers card on.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
it is interesting how that is, and how it ironically makes a precon, quote unquote, immediately into bracket 3. I think it's ironically the Game Changers list makes them designing precons more difficult for them.
Yeah.
In a huge way. And in truth, speaking about precons, I would love to see them, because currently on the bracket system it says this is where the average modern precon sits at bracket 2, and I'm like, I feel like that should be bracket 1, just because I feel like so many people are like, well, my deck's better, I'm not, I upgraded my precon, so that means I'm a 3, right? No, you're probably still a 2. For the most part, a 10 card swap on a precon, you're still a 2. I'd say most precons. There are a few exceptions, but that's too hard to get into the specifics of. But
I think
I would
ones
love
are.
to see it sit lower.
Yeah, I mean, I think ones are. They're supposed to like meme decks, right? These are decks that are not like these are like theme meme cards like that where I got a bunch of creatures with hats on, like that's their thing, and so it's I think they're all pretty much bracket 2. But yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be interesting, kind of coming out of the gate. Like, what are they going to do? Are they going to continue to design decks that are bracket 2 and just all keep it there, or are there going to be some that come out bracket 3? I mean, it's hard to really say because I know that Seaborn Muse was actually a pretty expensive card. Well, not super expensive, but it was expensive enough. The fact that it came out in a precon was awesome. Like, you guaranteed you were able to get the card. But it makes it a little bit more tricky because now it's a bracket 3 deck, though. It's a little weird.
It's tough, and I really don't want them to necessarily balance future precons around the bracket system. I realize it's something they're probably going to take into account, but I'd love them to just release fun precons, and ignore the obviously you want to keep it on the lower end of power, but like, especially since it's very clear that this list is going to be a living, breathing thing where it's not on there, it's on there, and I'm really kind of hoping we see updates every 3 months, I think is a reasonable number. Obviously with their access to data, maybe they could do it quicker, but I think 3 months is probably kind of a reasonable time, 4 times a year roughly, to kind of do it. And I imagine that most updates aren't going to be 18 cards, but probably 2 to 3 maybe. We got 2 going on, 1 coming off kind of deal. But as we do move forward with the bracket system, I would really love a little bit more clarity on a few things, like with basically the literal rules versus kind of the vibes. How the top lists the specific rules behind building, and the top says, this is a very casual thing, or it's optimized or whatnot. And I would really like them to be very specific, namely with one thing that really bothers me is the tutors, where they say few tutors. Well, what's few? Two?
Well,
Five?
technically, few means three.
Seven? I mean, yeah,
If you
but is
technically
that
know
what
the
they
word,
mean?
but that's what I yeah.
Yeah, I
Who
mean,
knows?
like you're not wrong. I would agree if you were being really literal with few, it would be about three. But is that what people think? And you know, obviously now with the addition of crop rotation, like does that include things like three visits or nature's lore? You know, all the green go find land tutors, but they're you know much more specific. You know, find forest, find island, you know, Farseek
Yep.
and whatnot. Um, which I don't. I think I have no reason to be there, but do those count against your tutor cost? You know, like are they 1 to 3? Are they not? And obviously, this is such a difficult balance problem. But just, I think it's largely because what I do professionally. But I like specific verbiage on rules
Yeah.
versus kind of this idea of just a few, you
Well, I
know.
think it leaves a lot
Um,
of hurt feelings out there, right? Like,
mhm.
it potentially leaves a lot of hurt feelings. Somebody, somebody brings a deck with 4 tutors in it, and they're like, "Well, it's a few." Someone's like, "Well, I don't consider that a few. I consider it more than a few, right?" Maybe they think of it like literally that it's 3. Maybe they think it's less. It's 2. Like maybe they think that a few is 2. Like there's still a chance that you get a little hurt feeling. And also, you brought up a really good point. Does that person or do those people uh, consider 3 visits or Farseek
Yeah.
a tutor?
Hmm.
Because like I mean, being able to go find a basic land, I don't know if I consider that a tutor, but be able to go find any forest, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. You can get some really, really good lands out of just being able to go find a forest or going to find anything but a forest with Farseek. Um, it's like, do those people consider those tutors? And so oh, I'm only running 3 tutors to go find any card, but I'm running 3 other land tutors, and they're like, well, that's 6 tutors. I think you're right. It potentially leaves a little room for hurt feelings. That if they were just to define what tutors are we talking about and how many is a few, right? Define
Yeah.
those terms. I think you make it so that they those hurt feelings won't happen.
Yeah, I think I specifically want them to be hyper specific about those is the bracket system really isn't for your pod. I mean, yeah, you can use it as kind of a guiding mark for your pod, but I view the bracket system as you're going to an event, you're going and playing random people, as that's when it should be really, really well defined. You know, because inside your own pod, you're going to self regulate. You don't really need the bracket system inside your own pod. You all should have a relative idea of where your decks stack against each other, you know, after you played at least once or twice. But when you're going out and playing somebody you've never played before and might never play again, having relatively specific rules where everybody's by the same rules, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I think is immensely helpful, and I hope that's something they kind of look at as they go forward. This all being said, all you know, I hope they look at this. You know, I hope they look at that. Um, I'm really glad that they're taking you know a look at everything, the ban list, the game changers list, the bracket system. I'm glad they left it in beta for now and didn't move forward with it, you know, as like the official thing, but like really leave a lot of room for growth. And I think everybody who was willing to join the Commander format panel, I want to say thank you. After the kerfluffle that happened last year, I imagine being part of that panel might have felt scary to those people, potentially considering what happened. Um, and I want to give huge props to all of them being able to share their opinion and do what they want. And Wizards kind of saying, you know, we still want community input. They just didn't lock out the community. They still are getting input from people around the game, and it's not just Gavin and his 3 best friends in the back
Yep.
room uh, quietly plotting to destroy the universe. Um, and you know, I think that it's really great that you know they're taking some swings, taking some chances, and this can be a living and breathing thing as we go forward.
Yeah, I mean, we all have to take chances. We all have to make decisions. And it is okay to be critical of those decisions. But that's the key, is that you're critical. And it's constructive. I can be upset with some things going on the Game Changers list or going on the ban list, and I can share that through saying, I just don't agree, and this is why I don't agree. The way that the event that happened last year went was very uncalled for, right? There's a lot of threats. It really it put us into a place where the Commander Rules Committee had to give up the reins, and that was not anything that anybody wanted, and that was really unfortunate. So going forward, it's like, be critical of all these things, but be constructive about it. Share how you feel, give your reasons, tell them how you feel, but do it in a way where it keeps it about the cards and not about personal feelings or sharing violence. Like, don't do that. That's bad. These people are putting their time and efforts into making the game better, and the thing that we can do is to share with them our thoughts, but in a constructive way.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. And with Wizards behind it, there's a lot of ways to give your feedback. You know, they have all their posts, all the social media, they have more access to more data than the old Rules Committee ever did. So if you have a thought or have a feeling and you want to leave it down in the comments, please do. And if you've made it this far in this video, please like and subscribe. We really appreciate you watching. And thanks for being here. I've been Ryan.
And I'm Thomas.
We'll see y'all.
We're out.